What if I told you that this is the 5th time I've hit record on this episode? The first few times had the opening jingle. This one does not. And this could simply be the shortest episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft show ever. I am recording this on Sunday, March 1st, and the reason why I'm recording right now is because, well, I have promised you there'll be a new episode every Monday morning at 12:01 a.m., and normally, I look forward to sitting down behind this microphone and sharing with you everything that's been going on, except that a lot of the things that have been going on this past week are very similar to the things that had gone on the week before, which I've already expressed and explained and shared in full detail in the episode that was just before this one. And like I said, this is a number of times that this has been restarted. And I got about 4 or 5 minutes and I'm like, this is boring. And I don't want to put a boring podcast episode out into the world. And this brings to that question, and this has been something that has come up over and over again. Is there value for creating content consistently week after week, even when you don't feel like there's something you have that's important enough for people's attention, or if you're not fully feeling it at the moment when the time comes? The whole week has been kind of very focused on some other projects, and so when the recording day came around, I didn't sit down and devote the time to record at the time because there was no outline then, and I was in the thick of a week that was very much similar to last week, and yeah, all of those things. And there's this concern that I have had about creating content for the sake of creating content. And that is definitely one way I could choose to frame, or it's one story that I could tell myself about this particular episode. And I have oftentimes throughout the 20 years of podcasting described and framed my experience with content creation, where there have been seasons where I was creating content just for the sake of creating content, meaning that, oh my goodness, it's time for the deadline. It reminds me of an old commercial that only those who are as old as I am or older probably will remember. It's time to make the donuts. Those good old days of the Dunkin' Donuts commercials. I recognize now that I'm having conversations with people that I consider to be adults, and I'll sit down and be having a conversation with them, and I will reference something from either the 70s or the 80s or the early 90s, only to realize after seeing their confused face, not getting any kind of response that would indicate that they understood the reference, to realize it's like, oh my gosh, those things that I experienced were before this person I'm talking to was born. And I'm like, but wait a second, this is an adult. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm old. That's one way to think about it. Anyway, there have been seasons when I've thought about it, what's the value of just creating a piece of content because there's a deadline? I sat down here for a little bit and I'm like, okay, let's think about some of the things that I could talk about. Well, I could talk about the 2 books that are on my mind recently. I read the book, What's Your Dream by Simon Squibb. And ironically, I made no highlights on this book. I was using this little palm-sized ebook reader that I adore and I love. And it's amazing for going through a book and being able to read at random, wherever I am, all of this stuff. But unlike my Kindle, I have no ability to highlight. I was listening to that book via the Speechify app because I had converted it into EPUB. And there is the ability to highlight certain sections, certain quotes that I find interesting. And what I find interesting is that I went back to look to see if there were any highlights. I only made one in that book. I think I was more interested in consuming the book than I was highlighting and taking notes. But because of all of that, I will tell you that the book had a lot of brilliant things to say that I resonated with fully. The whole idea and the concept of making sure that you don't give up on your dream and you pursue the things that are meaningful and purposeful to you. And it just brought up this whole concept in my mind that we only live one life on as who we are, and what are you doing with it? And is it purposeful? Is it meaningful in some way? Is it something that you want to do, or are you merely surviving? And it brings up a lot of philosophical questions for me as I read this. And of course, I'm one whose message is free your dream. I want to entertain, educate, equip, encourage, inspire, and motivate people to free the dream inside of them. So I can tell you right now, I fully resonate with about 80% of what I heard in this book as I was reading this book along the way. The book tended to steer into a territory where it didn't resonate much with me. So there was this section in the book where it talks about, you have to scale, you have to grow these things. And eventually, for you to be able, you have to enroll other people into your dream, hire people. And eventually at one point, you're going to need to delegate this thing. You're going to need to be able to do this. And it seemed to just make this assumption to buy into this typical standard narrative of what it means to be on the entrepreneurial journey, that you're going to grow, you're going to scale, you're going to sell. And I'm like, why is this a part of this? And then as I'm reading, I'm like, well, this is perfectly fine. This makes a lot of sense. This is autobiographical in the narrative side of it, of Simon Squibb. He shared how he had a dream and how he eventually scaled it and how he was able to sell it, and now he has all this wealth, and now he can go out and help other people in all these ways. And I think what I recognize is that he's like, well, this is how it works for me, and I've helped a lot of other people do this, and so therefore this is the path. This is what I recommend. And I don't have any qualms at all about Simon writing that book in that way and showing that this is a path. And I don't know that at any point where he says this is the path, but it doesn't really talk about any alternative paths. It doesn't seem to indicate that you might find a job that you love and create work that's aligned with your dream and your purpose and your mission, and you do that until the day you die, or until one day you retire, and as a result of staying lean and focused and doing this as a company of one, for example. It just doesn't seem to fit into the worldview of this book. Not that this book has a worldview, but certainly Simon's experience and his own journey is reflected and mirrored in this. And so I found a ton of resonance with the first 60% of the book, where essentially it's like, listen, if you've given up on your dream, if you think you don't have a dream, you do have a dream, here's how to discover your dream, and the importance of following your dream, the importance of not giving up and having that purpose and defining your purpose and having it give you the ability to have resilience. I mean, there's so much brilliance in as far as in my own, what lights me up and gets me excited in that book. But then it starts to turn into a oversimplified e-myth kind of thing from Michael E. Gerber, that you've got to get the right people in the right seats and grow and scale this thing and sell it. Anyway, and then I think the end of the book was very encouraging and stuff like that. But anyway, that's what's your dream, and I feel like naked in the fact that I don't have tons of notes on this book. I feel naked in that I don't have lots of highlights that I can go through and read a highlight from a particular chapter and read it to you and commentate on it. That seems odd to me. And so I'm recognizing that as I put this together. Anyway, I noticed that I opened up that little thought of creating content for the sake of creating content. And yet, then is there value in showing up? And the other narrative where I can say, hey, you know what? Just that little diatribe there, that was valuable. You know what's valuable is hearing somebody's voice that you come to trust and enjoy, and you seek to hear what's going on in their world, even if it's the same thing. Now, do I think there's value in creating content for the sake of creating content? That phrase seems dissonant to me, meaning that it doesn't resonate at all with me. It's like, it kind of gives me an feeling. I'm just creating content for the sake of creating content to live up to a deadline. And honestly, if that were what I was doing right now, I would not be recording right now. If that was what I was doing, I would prefer to fail to live up to my commitment to showing up every week. So this right here, my voice recording with no outline, no direction, thoughts going in every single direction, all of this is not me creating content for the sake of content. This is not me creating content because I promised to be here and I'm worried about my credibility in the eyes of anyone if I don't show up after making this commitment. That's not why I'm creating this. I would much rather let people down or let people say and think or have any kind of perception of me, whatever. That none of that stuff matters to me. But there is a different narrative. There is a different way to frame what I'm doing here. And that is the value of showing up for your community, the value of being that voice in somebody's life, that value of allowing somebody to join you on the journey and to be a part of their journey. And that's something that I do know that is happening right now. I will not name the name of this person that I listen to quite frequently, but I will share with you that over the past season, there have been a number of episodes from somebody that I listen to where it's just like, wow, this content just seems like it's the same thing every single week. And sometimes I find myself having commentary on how I think this person could do things differently. And there's all sorts of, it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And then of course I'm thinking about all of this stuff and I see the mirror reflection of why that seems to mean so much to me. And I'm like, I like listening to this. At the same time, what I'm getting at is there's been a season where there's a particular solo hosted podcast where I listen to the host of the show, and it seems like for 3 months, and that's at least 4 weeks a month for 3 months, a lot of episodes, every single episode, pretty much it was the same story being told. It was from beginning to end, it just seemed, not that it was the same episode released, it was just rehashed and reset a different way, but this person's week from one week to the next was exactly the same problems, the same struggles, the same ideas of how they're going to overcome it, and then and how that didn't work, and it's it was just on rinse and repeat. The interesting thing about it, though, I still listen to every single one of those episodes. I didn't miss one of them. Even though I questioned at times, I'm like, wouldn't there be something out there that I can consume that would give me a far greater return on my investment if I were to listen to something more along the long lines of a personal or professional development thing? Maybe go over and listen to an audiobook. Maybe go read a book. Why am I consuming this content every single week during these weeks where it just seems like it's more of the same? And the answer is very clear as I look back on it. It's like, well, I've come to really enjoy living vicariously somebody else's experience of life and being alongside their journey. Sure, it's a lot of fun when they're doing new and exciting things and they're really pumped up and excited. It's a lot of fun when they are seeing great momentum and they come back and report all of the fantastic, the bounty from their week and it's like, this is so cool. I'm so inspired. I'm so motivated. But there's something about also being along with those people through their creative slumps or their struggles with personal issues with family or their own health issues, or whether it's just the same old behavioral patterns of overcommitment and over-obligation and very poor decisions of how to invest your time, effort, and energy, and hearing the fallout of that. And yet I found myself still very connected to this particular podcast host. And it's not just this person. I'm thinking of 20 years of listening to podcasts. I've tuned into a lot of shows where I sometimes get halfway through an episode or after 2 or 3 episodes feeling like there's a little bit of a pattern that isn't necessarily something that would it wouldn't cause me to become a new subscriber, but something that is even got me questioning. Do I want to continue to subscribe to this? And yet the number of times I continued on with the journey, knowing that it was a season of their life and that they're not there for me to be entertained. They're not there for all of this information. They're not there for my insights. They're not there to teach me something new. Sometimes they're, and by the way, that's not to say that I don't get some of those things from them many times. And yes, I do. But there are some times when all that they have to give me is a familiar voice to listen to. And the ability to stay connected to another human through time-shifted audio content where it's just there's this connection. And I recognize that I love when somebody would hit the record button. And I'm there, like I said, I'm not naming this person, but I am so thrilled that this person during all of those months, and they chose to hit record instead of just taking a week off and then taking 2 weeks off and then not hearing from them for many weeks and then come and waiting, and they come back and then they've got so much to share and they don't fit it all in or whatever. I'd much prefer to see that pop up in my email, in my podcast app of choice that says, oh, there's a new episode from this person I love to listen to every week. And so anyway, the narrative is I'm showing up because I want to show up for my community. I want to be a voice that they can trust that will be there. And there's something powerful about authenticity. Although I question how authentic am I in the fact that, now that I'm quite a ways into this episode, but there were a couple versions of this show before I hit record on this one where I did the most authentic thing. Hey, This podcast episode may be a total train. I didn't actually say that one. That one's a new one, but it was something along. I have no idea what I'm going to say in this episode and what you're going to get from it. So if that sounds interesting to you, I can't even remember how I said it, but it was pretty much. And I got into it, and I'm like less than 2.5 minutes into the episode, and then I sit there. It's like, this is terrible, and I would stop because I was like, no, this isn't terrible. This is just what it is. Those things that I said were impromptu, immediately what was on my mind, and it authentically just came out of my mouth into the microphone. And yet somewhere I got a couple minutes in and I decided, that's not good enough. And what I can tell you is, in those first few moments, I'm like, oh, I know what's going on here. I'm framing this as I'm creating content for the sake of creating content. And in fact, it was right when I was actually saying, I feel like I'm creating content for the sake of creating content, or I'm running into the danger of doing this, that at that moment, I'm like, well, this is boring. So anyway, wow. I do feel like this episode is a train wreck. But there have been so many times over the years that I have created podcast episodes where after I released it, I wake up the next day and I think, I'm going to delete that episode out of the feed. And by the way, there have been a few times over 20 years that I have actually done that. However, there have been times when I was on the verge of doing that, but to open up my email box and see that somebody sent me an email related to that episode, and it blew my mind at how much it meant to them. So there's that. Obviously, as I look to see where I'm at right now, I notice this is not going to be the shortest episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. So there's that. And not that I could wrap this up anytime now, and I understand that. And my question would be, what would be the value of this episode? What would be the value of this episode? Certainly, I don't think this is an episode for anyone that is coming across the Cliff Ravenscraft Show for the very first time. And as you hear me pausing, I am beginning to get very much in my head about what's the value of this episode. But I am going to continue on. I'm going to let this be a test. Is that the way? An experiment, as my friend Michael Stelzner would say. I want this to be an experiment. This would probably be on a scale of 1 to 10. This would be about a 2 or a 3 on what I think would be a good representation of my brand and who I am in the world. And my question is, could I put this episode out? And I'm already seeing inside of myself, I'm feeling inside of myself, I'm questioning even right now, as I'm recording this episode, will I publish this episode? That is hilarious. What value has there been? Well, there has certainly been the value of showing up for those in my community who look forward to hearing my voice. There's value in the fact that I'm not trying to project some sort of image of me beyond who I am in this moment. I said at the beginning, I'm not even feeling it today. I'd probably much rather go out and enjoy the sunshine and play on my amateur radio this afternoon, go shopping with my wife. We do our grocery shopping on Sundays. And later this afternoon, I'm picking up my daughter from the airport and just call it a day. And you know what? So be it. What if I don't have an episode Monday morning? There's a part of me that's like, But then I'm like, no, I'm going to come down here and record an episode of the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. And I'm like, well, I could do some thoughts on Simon Squibb's book, What's Your Dream? But I was hoping to put that off until I finished a separate book called Company of One by Paul Jarvis. The only thing is I still got about 5 hours worth of reading of the book Company of One. And so far, I'm really resonating with Paul Jarvis in his book, Company of One. And obviously, I'm a company of one. I prefer a company of one. And I am looking to see, are there enough successful examples out there of people who chose not to grow and scale their companies, but instead who chose to stay within a reasonable level of engagement with a reasonable number of clients? There's a section in this book, and I've been highlighting Company of One, by the way, but there's a part of this book, Company of One, that even says that, hey, some people have revenue goals, right? And they oftentimes say this is the minimum, but what if you were to put a maximum? It's like when you set a goal, it's like, okay, I want at least $400,000 in sales this year, but no more than 460. I think that might have been the exact example, or it was something close to like that. But anyway, I love how counter culture his message is, and the documentation that he's providing in it. And so I'm in the process of reading that book. Haven't yet got to it to see if, like, am I going to get 70% into this book, and then all of a sudden it's going to say, well, Cliff, as a company of one, you need to do these things, and then it's got a bunch of stuff that I don't resonate with yet. I don't know. We'll find out. Hopefully by next week's episode, I will have finished the book Company of One, although I will say that there's a possibility that might not happen. And it leads me to the next topic that I will share, that I'm just now deciding to share because, as I said, I'm looking at no outline here. I'm making stuff up as I go. But what I will share with you is that this past week, I have listened to more podcasts and podcast episodes than I ever thought like I ever would since the pandemic. I've shared a number of times that since the pandemic, the number of shows that I'm subscribed to and listen to on a weekly basis is at the smallest number it's ever been. And I'm talking about, because when I first started podcasting, I was subscribed to like 15 podcasts, and I would listen to every episode of all 15 podcasts. And over the years, that would, fluctuate from time to time. But when the pandemic hit, I turned to Clubhouse for most of my content consumption, and I kind of pared back the shows that I listened to just the ones where, quite frankly, fit the description of the kind of relationship that I just told you that this episode is the only people who will probably want to hear this episode. So over the last several years, there's been about 4 shows that I'm subscribed to where every episode there is one new episode each week, and I would listen to every single episode of those 4 shows. And that is a very small number of podcasts. Now, one of the things that I have shared in previous episodes is the fact that I am vibe coding my own software. And I have done a bit more coding of functionality and features into my app. And one of the most valuable features that I finally created is called an inbox. This is just like my Gmail inbox, where anyone and everyone who wants to communicate with me via email goes into an inbox that simply has, here's the subject line, here's who it's from, here's the date and time that it came in, and that's pretty much it. And then that's in chronological order, with the most recent episodes coming, or most recent emails coming in right at the top. I happen to have a personality that strives towards something called Inbox Zero. So last week I shared all about the fact that I had to go and dump a bunch of email newsletters because it just was messing with my email newsletter inbox zero. And by the way, I am going to create my own version of a Google Reader app. I'm going to vibe code that next. And I don't know, I may even consider the idea of bundling it into my app and coming. Ooh, I just had a different possible name for the app. Not going to say it out loud yet because I didn't go see if the URL is there. But anyway, but I now have an inbox. And the cool thing is that my software app of choice now is Podbriefer for my podcast apps. It's called Podbriefer. It's at podbriefer.com. It's not available to anyone out there yet. It's in developer beta only, and I am the developer. But let me share with you what I used to do. I used to use Pocket Casts for the shows that I subscribe to. And occasionally, I'd have somebody that I knew that I might want to check out their show, and I would also add it to my Pocket Casts app. And then occasionally I'd get reconnected to a former client or a peer in my space, and I would go and add their shows. And the only thing is these were not shows that I was going to listen to every single episode of everything they produce. And so what I started to notice is that the artwork started to show the little dot indicator showing there's a number of new episodes that are not listened to yet or not archived yet. And that would just grow and grow and grow. Meanwhile, my shows that I follow, I am listening to. And eventually I'm just like, you know what? I don't even see those. It's like the number just grows. It would start off, it's like, it would say 1, and because I would archive everything but the latest episode. And then I would see that number. And a couple weeks later, it's got a number 7 over top of it. And not once had I ever clicked to go and check out the most recent episode or any of the most recent 7 episodes that have been added since I subscribed to the show. And in fact, each time that number would jump from above 1, I would even be less likely to do it. It's just a psychology thing. And I trust me, I understand. Maybe people out there have similar ways of thinking about it, or maybe you just don't think that way. It's perfectly fine. But that's how I think about it. It's like, I'm less likely to click on it because now there's 7 unlistened to episodes. By the way, one of the features that I did like about Pocket Cast is you could actually go in and there was a setting that says, hey, every time there's a new episode, only keep the most recent one episode in the unarchived session. So basically, there is a functionality where I could say, you know what? I'm subscribing to this podcast. I want to archive everything except for the most recent episode, such that it would only have the number 1. And then if there's a new episode, it would still only have the number 1 because the newest episode would replace in the inbox, if you will, for the unarchived plays in that for that show. But I still found that I wasn't going down. I wasn't scrolling down, even though I'd all been caught up. Let's just say I'd listened to all of the episodes of the shows that I follow. I still never scrolled down to those shows. Something had to happen for me to even go down there. And by the way, eventually they sit there for so long, they don't get used. And I'm like, why am I cluttering this? And so I would go in and unfollow or unsubscribe from those shows in the Pocket Casts app. Eventually, this happened so many times, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, that I started using a secondary app. In this case, it was Overcast, and there's lots of different podcast apps out there. But I would use Overcast. And I would subscribe to those shows of my former clients, or I would subscribe to those shows of my peers or whatever. Another very similar problem. I never opened that app. And I'm not kidding you. Never. When I say never, I mean I never opened that app for the purpose of going and seeing, hey, I'm all caught up on all of my Pocket Casts app, which has all the apps that I follow. But now I'm over here. I'm all caught up. I wonder if let me go open up Overcast and see if there's anything worth listening to. And part of it is like, oh, wow, I open up the app and it's got all of these different shows. And wow, there's a lot of episodes of a lot of shows. And I'm like, and I close it and I go do something else. And so eventually I started bringing shows back into Pocket, back and forth, okay? But here's what I did with my own Podbriefer software. Well, first of all, I had to actually create an import-export functionality, which I'm thrilled to say was super easy to build. So I exported my OPML file. I don't know what that actually stands for, but anyway, it's all of your podcast subscriptions. This is a format of a file that has basically all the RSS feeds, names of the shows, all that stuff. So you can easily export that. It's essentially a text file that ends with .opml. And then you just import that into another piece of software and it'll basically go and subscribe to all those podcast feeds. So I built that functionality in to my Podbriefer app. And so I exported all of the shows that I had in Pocket Cast and I imported them into Podbriefer. One of the things that I built in is that every time I load a show, or if I'm doing a bulk import of shows, I can assign it a category. And I will read to you the list of categories that I currently have in Podbriefer. First of all, there is my shows. These are my own podcasts. The second one is demo shows. Now, these are actually fake podcasts. They're demos for me to test out other podcast software tools. And so these are shows that I don't want to see listed all the time, but when I do want to see them, I want them to be pretty much right up there next to my shows. Then the next category is shows I follow. These are the podcasts that I follow from other producers that I'm interested in. Then there is my current client shows. So anybody who is a current client, if they have a podcast or have had multiple podcasts, I'm subscribed to all of them and they're in the category called client shows. The next category is former clients shows. And then there's A to Z alumni, which I consider A to Z clients, students separate from former clients. Former clients typically means to me somebody who has hired me one-on-one coaching. They've been a part of my mastermind group, or somebody who, those kind of things. But podcasting A to Z alumni, the alumni are people who went through podcasting A to Z. They weren't technically one-on-one clients. They were part of a group program. So I've got everybody that was an A to Z alumni, subscribe to all of their shows, put them in that category. Then I have this category, they're called resonant souls. And these are just people in the world who are resonating deeply with who I am and what I do in the world. And there is a possibility, no expectation, but there's a possibility that if I had to guess who out there in my community are the most likely to potentially become a client, that's what this category is. So all of these people that I've met at PodFest and all these people that I've been connecting with recently, people who have interviewed me for their podcast, people who I've been connecting with via DMs on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram and all sorts of other places. If I ever find out that they have a podcast and we're really resonating, getting good dialogue, conversation going back and forth, I put their podcasts in this category. Then there are peer podcasts. This is where the Pat Flynn and Michael Hyatt and the Amy Porterfield and all my peers who have a podcast, this is where their shows go into that category. Then below that, I have podcasting. These are podcasts about the topic of podcasting. And so it's got its own category. Then I have occasional interests. Or actually, that's not plural. It's occasional interest. This is where Joe Rogan goes, Diary of a CEO, and any of those other long-form shows where I probably listen to one out of every 70 episodes they produce. They're super highly popular, and oftentimes there are occasional times when they've got somebody that I'd love to hear, or something that's so topical that I want to hear more about. And chances are, if it shows up there, I want to be able to show that category and, by golly, see that episode right there. Then there's entertainment. This is where I put my TV show fan podcast. So this is where I have like the official podcast for The Gilded Age, or the official podcast for what is that? Pluribus, and the official entertainment-based podcast about television shows that I enjoy. Then I've got a category for my old shows. These are not my current shows that are being produced now. These are my old shows. These are shows that I've done in the past, and I want them to be near the bottom of the list. And then I have uncategorized. And if I don't assign a category to a show that I subscribe to when it comes in, it automatically goes into uncategorized. Now, I created my software to have all of these different categories because I wanted to be able to filter my list of shows on my home screen to only those shows that I want to see at any given moment in time. So occasionally I have a filter button here, and I can actually go in and hit filter and hit clear all. And that's going to show every podcast that I'm subscribed to. And I enjoy that. All right. And then what I can do is I can say, okay, I only want to see my shows. And so now it's actually going to show me my shows. As a matter of fact, I need to delete this one thing in here. I was just testing or playing around with. Anyway, so I have my shows, and if I want, I can show my demo shows. And now I've checked 2 different categories, and only those categories are showing on my home screen. So, and it will remember that state. And so every time I log in, it will show up whatever was the last categories I chose to show. Now, sometimes I don't need to see my shows. I just want to see, I want to see the shows I follow, client shows, former client shows, and Resonant Souls. That's my typical thing. So when I actually log into the app, these are the shows that I see. But I love the fact that I can choose any combination of these. I could choose them all, or I could choose whatever. So I love the fact that I have categories, and it's essentially like saying, you know what, I have a separate app over here for this category of shows, and a separate app of this category, only it's not a separate category. And yes, I am very familiar that Pocket Cast had something called folders, and I could put categories of shows in folders. I didn't like it. It is not the same. Matter of fact, so the next thing I have is that inbox. Now, right now, my inbox does not allow for sorting allow for filtering of categories. It's something that I've thought of, although I think it might actually be a function that would work out to be a detriment. So, for example, I have no idea what show just got released, but I can tell you right now, as I started this talk about Podbriefer, there was only one show in my inbox, but now there's a second show. So I'm going to go ahead and click here, and there it is. It's Entrepreneurs on Fire. So March 1st episode just came out. Celebrity and billion-dollar brand marketing secrets with Rudy Maurer, an entrepreneur in EO Fire Classic from 2023. Okay, so now here's the thing. Because I have an inbox, I now see that John Lee Dumas published this episode for the Entrepreneurs on Fire podcast. That is because I have an inbox, I was able to see that. Now, I can tell you right now, I'm not going to listen to that episode at all. And so I could immediately archive this right from my inbox, just like it was an email that I'm not going to read or respond to. And it's out of my inbox, and it'll go back to inbox 1 because I still haven't finished the most recent episode of Mac Break Weekly. However, there have been a number of times when a show that I normally don't listen to has a topic that I'm like, I wonder, Do I really want to listen to this? By the way, check this out. This is a 23 and a half minute or almost 24-minute episode from Entrepreneur on Fire. So I'm going to click on show information and I'm going to request a transcript. So a transcript is being processed right at this very moment. And as soon as this transcript is finished, which it's almost finished right now because it only takes just a moment, I'm going to hit get a brief. And now I'm asking it to do what's called a summary brief. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you the summary of this episode with John Lee Dumas. It says, summary of the podcast episode, Celebrity and Billion-Dollar Brand Marketing Secrets with Rudy Maurer. Says, overview. In this episode, EO Fire, John Lee Dumas host Rudy Maurer, a serial entrepreneur renowned for his experience in scaling billion-dollar brands through innovative marketing strategies. Rudy shares insights about the importance of creativity in achieving success, the value of adapting business strategies, and how to maximize lifetime customer value. Here are some key topics discussed. The importance of creativity. Rudy emphasizes that creativity is often overlooked in the journey to success, and it is critical for effective marketing and business growth. The next, journey to success. Rudy recounts his early entrepreneurial successes, his transition to the United States, and his significant achievements in marketing and running large brands. I'm going to try to remember that section right there, and I'm going to ask a follow-up to demonstrate my app. Billion-dollar brand strategies, this next topic here. Discussion on his work with companies like Radio Shack and Pure One, focusing on how to transition these brands into the digital age. Celebrity partnerships. Rudy talks about his collaborations with A-list celebrities and how to leverage their influence for business growth. Next is understanding customer lifetime value, the shift from focusing solely on initial profits to recognizing the importance of a customer's lifetime value in business sustainability. Main takeaways and insights, also a part of this summary brief. The first one, commitment and creativity. Success comes through creative problem solving and commitment to continual learning and growth. The next takeaway and insight, adaptability is the key. Business ecosystems are constantly changing, and the ability to adapt strategies is crucial for ongoing success. Third, long-term thinking, focusing on the lifetime value of customers rather than the immediate sales can lead to greater profitability and growth over time. Mindset shift. Entrepreneurs should believe in their potential to achieve far more quickly than social norms suggest. And then in the summary brief, there is notable quotes and moments. And so here's a quote on creativity. It says, I think the biggest thing people miss when it comes to being successful is creativeness. Another quote on customer acquisition. You need to be willing to pay a lot of money to acquire a customer because you're going to make 5 or 10 times back from that customer over the next year. Here's a quote on life goals. Your life can be amazing. You can achieve success in your life. If you become a billionaire, you're able to impact and influence the world. And then on personal growth, there's a quote that says, everything you're doing right now, you could be doing way more, and you could achieve it way, way faster. So that all came from just a brief on this episode. I didn't have to listen to that episode to get any of those insights or those takeaways. Now, the thing is I can actually go in and get another brief and choose a different, give me a more in-depth review. Give me a this. There are all sorts of different types of briefs that I can pre-populate. But with this one, I told you I want to go. It says, Rudy recounts his early entrepreneurial experiences, his transition to the U.S., and significant achievements in marketing and running large brands. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Let's see here. You mentioned his transition to the U.S. Can you give me more context around that in a single paragraph? All right, so I just submitted that inside the first brief, and it says, Rudy made a significant transition to the United States after leaving behind his life in the UK, which included family, a partner, and established business. This move was driven by his ambition to pursue new entrepreneurial opportunities and to scale his skills in online marketing. Upon arriving in America, he faced the challenge of starting anew, but through dedication and willingness to learn from trial and error, he successfully built a $1 million business within a year, leveraging his background and experience in online advertising to achieve rapid growth and success in the competitive landscape of American entrepreneurship. Okay, so there was something else in here where Rudy talks about his collaborations with A-list celebrities. Can you give me a bullet point list of A-list celebrities that he mentions doing business with, and a one-line statement with context around each? Again, these are follow-up inside the same brief that I've just created. So it says, sure, here's a bullet point list of what you asked for. Mike Tyson, partner with Maurer to launch educational initiatives, leveraging Tyson's wealth of experience and personal story, aiming to inspire and empower others. Tai Lopez collaborated on various business ventures, including acquiring multiple brands, utilizing his and Maurer's marketing expertise to revive and reposition the brands for online success. Alex Mayer worked alongside Mayer in revitalizing traditional brands through innovative marketing strategies, leveraging their combined skills and resources to generate growth. These partnerships have allowed Rudy to harness the influence of these celebrities to create impactful business models and broaden their reach in the market. Now, do you see how much information we've already gained from this almost 24-minute podcast episode? I haven't listened to, you know what? Let me do this. I'm going to ask a question in here. Can you tell me how many ads were put into this episode? Because it has the entire transcript, because it's going to wrote in here. And it's like, in this episode features 3 advertisements. Each ad segment focuses on different sponsors promoting their services or events relevant to the audience, including an ad for Go High Level, a promotion for Thrive Time Show, and QuickBooks Bill Pay. So there were 3 ads that I totally didn't have to listen to get any of those insights. And I can tell you right now, as I glimpse through that, I'm like, okay, there's a few things in here that are interesting. I piqued my curiosity. I can ask follow-up questions related to it. And at any point that I want, I could actually jump into the podcast. And one of the things that I haven't built in yet is to say, okay, what timestamp is this at? And I can actually play back from that episode or that particular point. That is actually coming. That'll be a feature that I'm sure that I will eventually want to do. But here's what I will tell you. I'm finished with this episode. I'm going to go back to my inbox, and I'm going to hit archive, and I'm going to hit confirm, and that takes it out of my email inbox or my podcast inbox. Do you see how it's like I would have never known who John talked to in that episode, what he talked about, and there could be a 30 or 40% chance that after going through that brief and asking some follow-ups that I'm like, you know what? I think I'd like to listen to that episode. That is what I'm building with this. And I will tell you, there have been a number of times where episodes have come in, and again, these are episodes that, do you remember just because it's in a folder somewhere, just because it's in my Pocket Cast app, without an inbox, like it's like, hey Cliff, here's the inbox. I want you to look at each one of these. And I've been training myself for years to say, you know what, let me ask myself, is this something that is relevant and important for my attention right now? And if the answer is yes, then I'll leave it in my inbox. If it's not, I'll do something with it and then archive it. And I now have a podcast inbox. And as a result of this, I have consumed a lot of content, a lot of podcast content in the past week. And the fun thing is that I can go in, and I haven't created this brief yet, but I'm going to create a brief that says positive feedback or something like that. And it will be something that I create as a prompt and say, hey, I just want to let you know, I just recently listened to this episode. And a matter of fact, I might even want to include some functionality so I can actually say, here are the insights that stood out to me. Please create positive feedback on this. And it'll be something that I can copy and paste and maybe even edit a little bit before I copy and paste, but be able to just shoot an email to that person, send them a direct message to let them know I listened to their episode. And I have done that this week for 5 different people saying, hey, I listened to your episode this week. And I didn't just go through the brief, I listened to the entire episode. Now, most of them I listened to at 2x speed, but I did listen to them and I got a lot of value. And so when I say that I may not get through Company of One book this week, the only thing that's going to keep me from doing that is people that I'm subscribed to releasing content where my priority is to, what are these people, what are my friends and my peers and my clients and my former clients and former students and these resonant souls who I've connected with, what are they creating in the world? And reaching out to them and saying, hey, thank you for the content that you're putting out into the world. This is powerful. And I'm going to build in functionality where I can even share on social media and put a link back to that particular episode with me sharing that, other people's content. And, when I feel like it's really valuable for my target audience, that is. So anyway, building this functionality, that has been a significant thing that I've been working on. Reading has been something I've been working on. I've been working on some other things with some projects and some clients that I can't talk about just yet, but exciting things are going on. But there you go. I thought this might be the shortest episode ever. It was a total train wreck in the beginning, and gosh, I didn't realize how much I would share about Podbriefer, but that is not even all the functionality that I've built into this software. I'll just share one more thing with you. I also created a thing called listening history. I just built it yesterday. And so right now it says, since February 28th, 2026, you have listened for 1 hour, 52 minutes, and 12 seconds, and then it's got a timer. It's got a little clock and it says that's a total of 112 minutes. So that total of minutes is going to continue like a lifetime clock. And of course, it's going to continue to say how many hours, minutes, and seconds, but eventually it's going to actually, after it gets more than 24 hours, it'll say you've listened for 3 days, 22 hours, how many minutes and seconds. And then when it gets past, it'll say you've listened to so many months, blah, 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 blah. How's it going to do that? I don't know. I'll let its logic figure out how it's going to determine how many months. I think it probably already has that figured out, because this is fun. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying life. I'm having fun. And these are the kinds of crazy stuff that's been going through my mind. That's been taking my attention. And if you are interested in a one-on-one conversation with me, you have never worked with me before, you know what I would love to offer you. I'm going to offer something different other than the Next Level Mastermind this week. I'm going to close this off and say, you know what? If you and I have never worked before, I want to offer you 3 90-minute one-on-one sessions for $1,500. This is an opportunity for you and I to get connected. I'd be delighted to share with you what my Podbriefer software looks like. I can show you the Replit tool, how I'm building features and functionalities into it, and how simple it is. We could talk about anything you want. 3 90-minute sessions within the next 90 days for $1,500. If you are interested, email me today, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Let me say that. Yeah. Slow down, swallow. cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. I'm not editing this episode, and yes, I'm putting it out. And if you listen to it all the way to the end and you want to let me know, my email address is the same, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com. Until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level. Podcast.
That's a man.